Namaste, everyone. I welcome you all to today's guest talk. The topic today is the power of self compassion, nurturing the narratives of love and kindness towards oneself. Our guest speaker, Ms. Astha Nagpal, founder psychotherapist at Daffodils Therapy Studio, has been in practice for about a decade now and is truly passionate about her work she's doing. She mostly sees young adults in a therapy space and follows a psychodynamic approach, enabling the client to explore the unresolved conflicts, understand one's personality, and work towards integrating key developmental learning missed while being stuck at an earlier stage of emotional development. Her recent accolades include the Economic Times Healthcare Award 2023 for Excellence in Clinical Services, Mental Health and Wellness in the North region of India. Astha, we are so glad to have you today with us. Thank you so much for joining us. Look forward to an interesting session with you. Over to you.
Thank you. Very good evening to all of you are present here and who would be watching this video later. I spoke to you, Arunima. I had word with Aditya, and I was really excited to participate and be part of this conversation. I very well understand that I'm also at a space where I'm expected to sort of deliver something, but I also very strongly feel that there's so much to learn from the audience, from the people who are willing to participate and be part of these conversations. So I'm not very sure if this can be an interactive space, but I would definitely love to probably pick up questions or queries, or it would be great if we can have, um, since it's a small group that I can see, if we can make it more interactive, more self-reflective, for us to come up with an understanding of the topic that I picked today, more from a space of experience than from a space of textbook knowledge. Thank you for having me. In fact, today morning I was invited in Hindu college, so students wanted me to talk about safe spaces, creating safe spaces, and they only brought in the idea of self compassion. Also, that's when I thought, okay, this is something that can be an extended topic. And I was thinking how the narrative around self compassion changes with as we grow older. So initially I thought, I want to focus on young adults and want to understand self-compassion from space of how our young generation is experiencing love and kindness towards themselves. But I feel maybe our generation or an older generation need more such spaces to reflect. So what really is self-compassion, and why it is a powerful tool for a healthy being, for being mentally and physically, and when we talk about well-being, so holistically, not just mental but physically. So as I understand, self-compassion is an ability and practice of holding oneself amidst failures, amidst disappointments, sufferings, and in these phase of contractions, you are able to continue to offer that love and kindness. You're able to give yourself that leverage to be okay. I think our culture also do not spare us from when we do mistakes, we often tend to get reprimanded, or there is a punitive um, uh, take that most of the parents take as a means to control or fix their child. And I believe a lot of us have also not understood why it is so important to give oneself that space and chance to also fail, to experience negative emotion, uh, which by me not just failure, but even anger, rage, or loss as an emotion that is equally important as happiness, as joy, as excitement. I think so that the gap or the struggle is a lot of us have not really known the vocabulary to talk about our experiences wholly in a holistic manner. We are stuck at looking at life in good and bad, a right and wrong. And I notice also being in therapy space and seeing clients individually for long-term work, most of us are coming from a space of um, harsh parenting where uh, a slightest of mistake or failure is accountable to one's self-esteem. And I have seen that being translated, multiplied with as we've grown over the years, and it starts to puncture the self-esteem, the self-concept. Interestingly, um, all of us now with social media and how acquainted we are with the digital technology, we sort of all of us have a status quo of how we are presented on social media, mostly now Instagram. And I think all of us know there's so much of disparity in how we want to portray ourselves to how we really are, because the fear is of what if somebody gets to know that I'm not as strong as I'm portraying myself. I'm not as happy as I'm portraying. I have massive self doubt, but I know the technique of how to market myself on the social media. I have learned that skill where I can be presented a certain way. But there's so much of dissonance. Like, there are so many conversations around we do not relate to what we are presenting ourselves on social media. We are different people, but to be able to come to terms with it and acknowledge that I can be vulnerable, I can allow myself to be kind, um, is absent. There are so many standards to meet. If I'm able to think right now about the physical attributes, I think a lot of us struggle to be kind with ourselves, with how we look. And I myself have struggled during my early years of teenage, when I was diagnosed with PCOS and I looked bizarre, and I had no explanation given by either of my parents or anybody for that matter to help me understand that this can also happen. um, it's very easy to say that be kind to yourself, um, but I think it's the um, most difficult life skill that one can adapt to, uh, because there's so much of shaming, there's so much of criticism, there's so much of um pointing out of things that you lack. So I was talking about this topic to one of my friends, and I mentioned that one deserves the same kindness that one is readily to give. And I was actually laughed at. One of my friends pointed out, well, that's your job, you've been doing that, you've been in the space of therapy, but look at you, have you been kind to yourself? When was the last time you took a break? When was the last time you appreciated yourself for whatever you're doing? And if you had this bits of lows, were you able to give that time, that leeway to yourself? And I was stuck that no. Um, so I don't think that this is, so that's when I realized that okay, it's not about young adults. Their struggles are very different because they are actually born in quite a overstimulated setup. But I think that struggle also lies with us. I feel that I struggle a lot to allow myself to love myself. It has been very, very difficult we talk about positive affirmations, and these are certain techniques that we use also in therapy. uh, Create a journal, write positive words, talk positively about yourself, keep reinforcing positive behavior. I think somebody who's going through the spiral of thoughts where I have not been in a conducive environment, where I have not felt validated and accepted by my first, role models, my parents, there's a high possibility that I would continue to struggle to find that acceptance in the society. So it's much easier to say that we can celebrate different means and ways of being compassionate to ourselves, but I also feel and respect very strongly that all of us are coming with very different narratives and context and culture to be able to understand fully, where is the lack, what is the struggle. But I was thinking that if we really want to practice this act and why it is so essential, can we just help ourselves to change the narrative, the internal dialogue that we struggle with? um, Maybe every time we sit for a meeting, maybe when every time we have to go out and meet someone new, maybe when we are signing up for a new project, maybe when we are just sitting with our friends, can we allow ourselves to change the narrative as to how I am being perceived by others and how I am perceiving myself in that setup? I think a lot of us, all of us, look out for attention and appreciation from the outside, but sometimes we don't realize that we give lot of agency to the other, and when we give a lot of agency to the other, we actually become handicapped in a way that I may not be able to restore the sense of narrative that I want to about myself, because I have left the other person to decide that for me. And that's where most of us struggle with this bit of unrest and anxiety around what does other think of me? What do they, are they liking me? Am I part, am I accepted in the group? This very um, famous and common slang FOMO. I was only introduced to this couple of years ago, where it's a genuine concern that a lot of young adults especially come up with. I think we maybe I didn't know, so I didn't know, I'm going through that, but that's when I was introduced to that there is a massive fear of missing out. So I might end up participating into so many things that I don't resonate with, where I do not belong. And that's where the gap begins. I may forget, it may become hazy for me what I really want, what I really appreciate of myself, what kindness really means to me. Because then, I'll try my best to conform to the given norms, the peer pressure, that okay, everybody is doing, I'm supposed to be a part of that, even when that clearly is unhealthy for me, that's destructive for me. And that is the dissonance which a lot of us struggle with, and we don't know how to then come back to the space where I can focus on myself, where I can allow myself to sit with the boundaries that I've created, if at all, if I understand what boundaries are. A lot of us, I think, we do not even know that there are different kinds of boundaries which one must practice to be able to feel safe, to be able to give oneself a chance to be compassionate to their own selves. We talk about emotions, we talk about emotional boundaries, where one must take care of their feelings, their opinions, their wishes, their expression of needs. Do we really choose who we want to share our things with? Are we accepting responsibility of our emotional needs? It's very hard. It's very hard to seek help. What will the other person think of me? Am I weak? And when somebody shows the interest, I may become extremely vulnerable because I need someone, and I may again forget that this may not be healthy for me. So it becomes even more important to keep restoring that sense of agency and autonomy where I get to decide and choose who I want to disclose, who I want to talk to, who I can share my emotional needs, whom I can share my feelings, for that matter, material needs, material boundaries, making sure that, your finances, your possessions, your desires around your goals, who is it, who is that one person, or who, what is that group that I'm willing to share it with? Time and energy. I think I really struggle with time and energy when it comes to time and energy, because a lot of us we don't realize that we are investing so much of energy. We are giving ourselves out there, which is probably not even being respected, not used in an effective manner. Rather, it goes against us. But at any given point of time, we have a control over the time and energy we want to invest it on. Whom do we want to give that time and energy? It is very, very crucial and important, and one of the means to practice self compassion. Mental boundaries. How are we taking care of our personal thoughts, our belief, our value system? I think again, this is a very, very crucial struggle with young adults. They are constantly revisiting their value system, their belief system, because that is being challenged constantly. How do I allow myself to I'm sorry. How do I allow myself to remind and continue to have faith in the belief system that I carry? Not letting anybody manipulate, bully, force me to think or act in a way that I don't agree to. Just a second, I'll have water. I think it's very easy to be influenced and become, very tight with someone who's readily giving us space to listen to us. And we forget, are we choosing that? Sometimes we are so needy that, we are willing to just explode because there's so much that needs to come out. So again, that again, I'm not saying that it's wrong, or you're doing something wrong. I think it's time that we reflect. It's time that we allow ourselves to sit with what really is happening. Because a lot of us are willing to blur our boundaries at the cost of our well-being. Blurring those boundaries or letting those boundaries being crossed is only suggestive of that something is off, something is not really going right, that I'm willing to take any means to get that attention. And maybe that is the need, maybe that is the hour, that is the need of that hour. And I may not want to think about it's right or wrong. Give yourself that leverage as well. But I think it's important to start participating in the narratives which pushes you to think. Even in therapy space, people are in therapy for years. It's not a space of right and wrong. It's not a space of judgment. It's a space of arriving at an understanding of self and coming to realization of one's pattern and willingness to work towards it. We as therapists are only moderators, are only on the receiving end, or that cushion for you to fall onto and for you to create a safe space for yourself where you are more compassionate towards yourself to be able to reflect and understand the potential pathology, the patterns which have been destructive, which has not been pleasant. Physical boundaries. Again, I think it's quite a struggle considering that we all are practically overly stimulated all the time. And the need to be gratified at any given point of time, we are so restless. We just want everything quickly. In fact, with we also observed this shift with COVID, how everything moved from offline to online space, and people started reaching out for therapy also as a quick fix. I think also that there are a lot of people who sort of claim that it can be fixed quickly or there are quick fixes. But I feel it's more counterproductive with regard to it's not a pizza, it's not Domino's, it's not Pizza Hut. You'll go, you'll get your food, you'll ring the bell, and you're satisfied, and you'll be out of therapy room happy. If a person is leaving a therapy room with a smile or being happy, something is wrong. Something is not really working out in therapy space. It is a difficult process. My job as a therapist is not um, to comfort you in a way where you know that it immediately fixes you because you demand to be fixed, you demand to be listened to. um, I'm there to sit along, to go through your journey, to experience the pain, to arrive at healing at your pace. I can't decide when a client wants to leave. Client decides when they're ready to terminate the work. So physical boundary, I think, is again very, very important factor when it comes to one's physical self. How and who one chooses to share one's body. Just as it's so important and crucial to whom are we sharing our emotions to, I think it's very crucial to also know, it's important to sit and ask, whom are you willing to share your body with? Whom do you want to be intimate with? Whom do you want to be touched with? Where is the affection that I'm seeking? We don't ask that because we are so deprived. So this love and kindness is always looked outside. I mean, I don't know how many of us are comfortable going out for lunch dates by ourselves. How many of us do solo travel? How it's actually not appreciated. It is seen as a sign of weak. It is seen as a sign of, are you depressed? Are you lonely? Are you isolating yourself? Are you, you don't have friends? Are you asocial? It is not seen as an act of self-love. It is not seen as act of self-compassion. So it's very hard to then differentiate, um, how much do I want to conform to the conventional living of the society, which expect me to be with people, socialize, uh, even if it's exploiting me, even if I am constantly bullied or body shamed or emotionally shamed, I still am participating and I'm part of those systems and communities because that's where I belong. If I don't, if I contest that, I may be rejected. And that rejection is so dreadful that a lot of us continue to participate and be part of system that is apparently toxic. It's very difficult to leave a setting which is visibly toxic, because the aftermath of it is so cumbersome, it's so tiring. The anticipation of loss is so tiring. The consequences, the fights after that is so tiring, the thought of it, that a lot of us continue to succumb to that bit without uh, really raising the voice. And I think that sort of again pushes us away. It pulls us away from the act of self compassion, from the act of self love. Do we? Are there any thoughts? Do anyone? I mean, I'd really appreciate if somebody wants to talk and just share their experience, if at all. Do we all practice self compassion? Can can I ask this? I mean, can this be an interactive space? Okay. Do we practice self compassion? Do we give ourselves enough leverage? It's okay. I may not have achieved my goals that I would have liked by this age. No, it's a no. We are struggling to love ourselves. But we are very kind when it comes to loving others. Most of us. We are readily there for people. We want to give them time. I think a lot of us also derive, so, you know, we derive a lot of nurturing by nurturing others. So when I'm able to offer that comfort, that support, that love to the other, the act of doing it makes me feel loved. Maybe it does to me. I think today somebody asked me, what got you in this profession? I did not study psychology until my graduation. I had sciences in my school, then I did literature, graduation in literature. Then I got into psychology, and so master's is pretty late to be introduced to a subject that you've not been acquainted at all. But when I did, and then I did my MPhil, and then I was practicing, I feel very grateful that how organically I did arrive at a profession that is so real to me. I feel very authentic when I'm practicing. And now with this topic and what we are having, the conversation that we are having, it also pushes me to think that how much love, I've been seeking in my life, that I have now sort of also attuned myself to receive it in different formats, where this act of being in this space. So as much as it requires skills and training, I think it also requires inherent innate ability to be empathetic, to be a listener, to be there to absorb so much that comes across in narratives. It's only now, very recently, that I have consciously started appreciating me time. I consciously talk about, loving oneself, being kind to myself, which comes to me with the breaks that I want, with the food that I want to eat, with the people I want to meet. I've started questioning my relationships. You know, some friendships have been existed for years and years, only to my realization that it is the familiarity of it. I am not gaining anything of that friendship. We are not even contributing anything to our lives. It's just we know each other, our families know. There is a sense of familiarity, but we are not contributing as individuals. We are not adding anything qualitative to each other's lives. What is that person doing in my life? I'm obligated to fulfill certain expectations. Yes, I know I have someone to say that is a friend, but do I really feel authentic? Do I really feel whole of me with that person? It's only now that I've started questioning and started to actively withdraw, to say no. When I was talking about time and energy, I realized that I've invested so much of time and energy into people I would have not liked to. And they are not even my responsibility. I'm not even obligated to. But the fear of loss, the fear of losing that only friend has pushed me to participate into something that is not even me. And ironically, the other person has not been able to realize I'm not me. So, what is that friendship really doing in my life? And I feel that it's only now that I've started actively practicing to say no, which is not easy because it was never taught to me as a child, as a grown up. It's a family, you need to be part of it, it's okay. But I do not resonate with anybody. I cannot have conversations. And there are no answers. Sometimes something needs to be done. Full stop. That's it. This is the part of life. You have to do it. Full stop. I think the act of questioning, the act of curiosity in itself is, it's liberating. But as much as it's liberating, it also instills a lot of fear in other people because you're questioning. You're questioning something that they do not have answers for. And maybe you're not even looking for answers. But the very act of questioning, of conversations, scare people. Nobody wants to be a part of difficult conversations. We all are struggling. I'm sure we all have issues, struggles, conflicts, and we all have to act that it's fine. It's not fine. I, as a therapist who's been practicing for 10 years and more, I've been in therapy. I need therapy for myself. I need supervision. I cannot ever claim that my issues as a child, as an adult have resolved, I'm all sorted. I can listen to any issues that come my way and help the other person feel better. I may not. I think to be able to recognize this limitation also is an act of self-compassion. I'm not perfect. I do not have all answers. I may not be able to make sense to all of you here. And that is the limitation that I'm willing to accept and work on. I don't know how many of us really celebrate ourselves, whatever celebration means to us. Can we do that? Again, how? I don't know. I like to dance when I'm alone. I can't stop if there's a 90s Hindi Bollywood song. I can be anywhere and I have this very strong urge to move. I will have a smile which anybody can see. And I realized that okay, there, and I don't want to stop myself there. But as a child, I might have been reprimanded to be a messy child. Are we able to note down, be mindful of instances when there are negative talks, negative self talk? This is a very common phrase people use. They bring it up in therapy. We are spiraling. We are spiraling into negative thoughts. Everything is going wrong. I'm not good enough. Things are not going okay. I must have done something wrong. With the understanding of energies and spirituality, and along with science, if I'm saying it aloud that I'm a bad person, I'm not good enough, I'm not offering enough in the relationship, that's what I'm also echoing back to me. I may not be contributing, and the other person may have told me that I'm not enough. They rejected me. But am I able to change the narrative of what I'm carrying about myself? I can't make everybody happy. So I cannot be enough for anybody. Can I allow myself to be enough for my own self? Again, that I think that's also very debatable, because in the Indian culture, we are also not encouraged with that thought. You're not enough. You need a family. You need a partner. So I believe that is also another set of debate there. Um, what does that really mean? I may have a family and home, and I may still not feel safe. They are the last person I want to go to and talk about my real feelings. Again, so there is no space of conversation. We are left to wonder ourselves. Are we doing right? Is it the right thing? Do we really appreciate nature around us? How many of us really sit out in our balconies just to watch the sunrise, just to be there? I don't know, with amidst this traffic noises. There are some birds still left in Delhi. You know, there are good noises also. I think these small acts of just paying attention to what your body needs. Again, it's also very recent. It might surprise you all. Only now I have started. I'm in sort of cognizant of my body sensations in a way. I can feel now that okay, I'm anxious. My body is giving me signals. I don't know if it used to. Maybe as a child, I again never had vocabulary. Mm. But now, if I am in a threatening situation, or if there's something that's worrying me, and if I sit with myself and my body, I feel that, and I'm still wondering, I'm still trying to understand, did I never allow myself enough time and space to observe my body? Because my body was always telling me that I'm uneasy. I need to ground myself. But rather, maybe I've chosen more work, a different means of coping, which may have worked up until now. But, being able to identify that my body is giving me signals has also allowed me to be more watchful now. I know which are the spaces that makes me uncomfortable. That is where the power of no also began. I have to say no if I'm not comfortable, or I have to express if I'm not comfortable. Do I have enough means and techniques to ground myself? Do I have a support system, a safety net that I can connect to feel better? When was the last time we read a book to enjoy the book? I mean, I'm also struggling because it's easy to then watch something. Um, it's more stimulating. Reading needs different kind of attention. But I think reading is a beautiful tool to give yourself that time. It is an act of love towards oneself. And reading with pleasure, I think it stays more longer than when you read to consciously retain something. When I'm just reading, I tend to be more receptive to what all I'm absorbing. How many of us have given ourselves breaks from phone? I think it's very hard. We have different means of notifications. Our laptop will have notification. Our watches will have notification. You know, uh, I didn't realize until one of my clients much later. We were having we were having a session where we were also reviewing the work, and then the client very hesitantly said, that one time, um, I saw your eyes were moving. I know which side your eyes move when you write. It was not that. So I believe you were checking your phone. And I felt bad. And I immediately apologized. Um, I had nothing to defend. I had nothing to, you know, go against because I knew it could have happened. And then I realized how much, it's such a reflex. वो phone side पे ही है. वो, it ring, if there's a notification, there's vibration, you just moved. You're tempted to check. And in that moment when I got that feedback, that disrupted the flow for him, I felt, and that was the day, and it's been a while now. um, I consciously ensure that um, I keep my phone upside so that I don't see, unless of course something pops up, an email, notification on the laptop. That's different. But I consciously made an effort to minimize my distraction. I could do that for my client because I'm accountable. It's still a struggle to do for myself, but I realize it's so important. What I said in the beginning, that we are so overly stimulated. We're constantly receiving some notifications, some update of our lives, of other people's lives. And I think in the process, we all are just so confused. There are 10,000 ways of loving oneself. But it's so hard to sit and ask what love means to you. I would rather adapt to something that some celebrity follows, because that seems, something about that seems very acceptable. But I think we all have that power and creativity to curate something that is exclusively ours. And I think if we start appreciating that bit, we will be more healthier. I'm not saying that will resolve our conflicts, that will cater to our traumas, our childhood conflicts. I'm not saying that. That will not resolve relationships, but that may be an initiation, a start to a better relationship with yourself. And I think that must be the goal. It's never too late to give that time attention to oneself. Because if I'm able to appreciate myself, my longingness to be appreciated outside will not be absent, but it will diminish. I'll not be totally dependent on what others think of me. I will be able to make peace with what I think about myself. That's all. I think there was some message. I'll read that. Arunima, can I read that?
Yeah, sure. Or we can
Okay.
ask Srividya to if she would like to
Okay.
speak
Of
herself
course.
or
Of course.
Right. Thank you, Astha. very authentic sharing and beautifully rendered. So, no, just while you were asking for responses on self-compassion and drawing boundaries, I had just noted down that it's probably difficult for people to say no, and then for other people to receive the no also respectfully if you choose to not be part of a social circle. And yeah, it takes a lot of courage to do that. And then to find those patterns or those rituals that make you enjoy yourself or find love in a different way is also a journey, which I think is, it's not hardwired, it's not even talked about. So it's a long journey. So I was just really agreeing with you. And yeah, nothing really else which was different. What is what I liked a lot about your sharing was that you share your journey as a therapist and a person who is working out their conflicts also internally. And I think that is very beautiful and authentic because that's the reality. A lot of people feel that, if you are a psychologist, your life must be sorted internally, and there is no such thing. It's such a mythical thing. It's just that there's so much more awareness sometimes. And the way psychology is taught or received also varies. Sometimes it's just theory. It's only when a student is receptive enough to see what that means to them, their life, their relationship with themselves, which I thought was a very, very powerful phrase that you use, that you can actually engage in therapy. Otherwise, it's a series of degrees that people take on. So I'm very yeah. Those are just some observations and sharing. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree that I may learn to say no and I may actually start practicing no, but people around me have also been attuned to the other way around. So I may come across with a lot of shock and I may receive a lot of hate around that. And of course, it will come at some risk. But I strongly feel that if you feel that it's worthy of, if it's going to take you somewhere that you're willing to go, people will understand or they may not. Like, again, it's very why I'm keeping it with, with an open end, with not very clarity, because I know it's also a personal struggle. I have not, I mean, so my parents are receptive, but they're not. It's like I'm also trying to find that one person, which is again a utopian thought. I will not. So, like I said, then the journey has to be inwards. Once I start working inwardly, I think my capacity to bring change, which is again very inherently driven by this desire to do something, um, I will do that without complaints, without really criticizing the system alone. I'll do my bit anyway. So I think it has to start inwards to also be visibly acknowledged for outside much later. It's going to be long and slow.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have a small question, more from a spiritual psychological perspective, and I request Professor Brijlani also to chip in. So, a lot of psychology, self compassion, self love is about going within, knowing your boundaries, making sure that you're taking out time for yourself, learning to say no. And there's a lot of discussion in spirituality, which is basically saying it's all about giving. It's through giving that we grow. And that's also, there are two equally strong voices. And there is no perfect balance. But the truth is that we can't give unless we have a lot within ourselves. And yet, in a lot of spiritual journeys, we hear about how people have healed a lot by giving exactly what they missed out on life. I don't know if I've made any sense here, but it's just a thought that came to my mind as I was seeing both of you on this Zoom session, and I think both are true for me and they are valid. But I would request both of your inputs on this one.
So please, I would like to hear from so.
Yeah, Dr. Bijlani, request you to.
When Srividya said that in spirituality it's all about giving, there are two small questions associated with it: giving what and giving to whom. You can give only what you have. That, of course, is clear. But then what you have is something that not everybody needs. And when you have that complementary situation, then it makes sense. Because what we have to give is love, basically. It's very easy to say that love all humanity. That's one of the easiest things to say. What is difficult is to love a few real people and express that love by giving. Which, in other words, what it boils down eventually to is that you have to find those people who need what you can give, associate more with those people, because nobody can associate with everybody in the world, although you may love everybody. And if you have made that choice, select a circle where you have something to give who need something. And in turn, it also generally means that who can give something that you need. Then you know you have that type of a perfect complementary situation which all of us need. That is generally easily met when you are dealing with the average population, because that sort of a complementary situation suits most people, because they want to give something which most others around them need. Difficulty arises when you are the odd one out. And that is where the difficulty begins. But then uh, gradually you discover where you have that complementary situation existing.
I'll just add here, and I totally agree with what Dr. Bijlani said, that I may have a lot to give, but people on the receiving end may not need what I have to offer. And a lot of times, there is a lot of self rage because, so the rejection is about, look, I have so much to give, but the other person is still not happy. What else can I do? I'm giving everything. But in most scenarios, in most cases, we also don't want to listen to what is it that they want from us. We want to give what we have. And I think to be able to understand that there, there is a high possibility that there will be a disbalance and disparity in what I'm offering and what the other person is receiving, also how they are receiving it. If I'm able to understand that, then my angst towards not being appreciated and carrying a sense of entitlement or the power of being a giver will be mellowed down. And I think to be a real giver, one has to learn. I don't know how to. One has to learn to mellow down the entitlement and the sense of power that comes with the position of being a giver. Uh, and if I'm able to realize that, if I'm able to ground myself, um, I think I'll be able to contribute better and I'll be at a peace with myself. Otherwise, I will continue to be in the conflict of being a superior, and then it will be reduced to power dynamics or politics, and I think everything is governed by power. So then I'll be then a person who is equally consumed and absorbed uh, with that ego, if I may say it, with that sense of entitlement, with that sense of self-absorption. And I think that changes the real meaning of giving. It really does. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, that again takes us back to spirituality, where we do accept the ego and its positive role, but we also see its limitations. And when it comes to giving, even if we are, of course, firstly, I mean, to be a good giver, you also have to be a good receiver, which means we should be open to what we can receive from the other person. And that also generally is true. But then, even if there's nothing else that we can receive, at least one thing we are receiving, even when we are seeing ourselves only as a giver, and that is the receiver is giving us an opportunity to give. And that itself is something through which we can go spiritually. And when we generalize that, when we give something or do anything for that matter, which we feel is uh, giving something which we are specially equipped to give, then there are at least four types of renunciations that go with it in spirituality. Firstly, that we are not truly giving something or doing anything. We are only an instrument of the divine who has given us the ability and the opportunity and the circumstances in which we can give. So we are mere instruments. The second thing that has to be given up is that we have to give up that egoistic feeling that I am so special that I have been chosen as the instrument. One has to realize that the divine has no shortage of instruments. It is our privilege that we have been chosen as the instruments, not because the divine was uh, had a scarcity of instruments. So this pride of having been chosen as a special person also has to be given up. The third thing we have to give up is the outcome. And part of that outcome is how well it is received. So the person may reject us and still we have to be prepared for it. So we are not attached to the outcome. And the fourth thing we have to give up is the attachment to the work itself. It's not that I all the time have to have that type of work to do and opportunities available to do it. So I should have enough of that inner work available so that this outer work is not necessary. I'm not dependent even on this outer work for my well-being. So if all that has been done, then the ego does not come in the way.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Uh,
Beautiful.
Yeah, I would like to thank Astha for her lovely candid session today. I'm sure all of us would be able to relate to one or the other point that you have shared with us. And thanks a lot for sharing your personal experiences also. Thank you so much. We can open to the audience now. I had seen Durjoy sir had raised the hand earlier.
No, actually, that was a little mistake. I was going to ask very basic questions, and then I thought that I felt that I should reflect a bit more before asking those questions. But I just felt like self-love. When we just hear about self-love, first thing we have to differentiate it is this is not being self-centered. So what then does the term to a common person self-love mean loving oneself? So what I gather is that giving a little bit more time to yourself so that it becomes a gateway to maybe self-introspection, and then beginning a journey from there. And then when Dr. Bijlani said, what do you have to give? I thought maybe we should also inquire within, other than our material things, what are the things that we can really give? Can we think of those things? And then, maybe find opportunities to give that. So just very basic questions, but then I thought I should think a bit more about these questions myself before I ask them, but I've asked them. Thank you very much. It was a very thought-provoking talk.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for sharing. Anyone else from the participants would like to share or ask something? Dr. Bijlani, yeah, come on.
Thank you very much, Astha, for this talking and your sharing. I don't have so much question. I just want to thank because it was a nice reminder to have a positive narrative through journaling or through thoughts, or because it's something that I can easily forget, and then I'm also in this spiral. And it was also interesting to have this point of view of taking some time for ourselves and how to share the times we are spending with people. For myself, I am more do I am isolating myself because most of the time I have because I take out lots of my surrounding or people I was sharing with. So now I feel I am more lonely and I have less company, and I try to choose better to whom I share my feeling. And so sometimes I feel maybe I am isolating myself, maybe it's not so good, but I try to be compassionate also and say, maybe it's okay also, and slowly it will come. So yes, I want to thanks for the nice remindings, and now I have this fresh in my head. It will also help. So thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing, Thomas. Dr. Bijlani, I request you if you would like to share your thoughts on this session.
I'd first like to congratulate Astha on giving a session which has given a lot of room for reflection and thinking. It was a very thought-provoking session. And if I may sort of say in a lighter vein, when she talked about the way we are bombarded with notifications and even offers of notifications. The moment you go to a website, before you can see what you went to that site for, it first asks you, do you want this site to send you notifications? And most of the time you say no, and still you end up getting so many. So the COVID pandemic may be gone, but now I think we have a pandemic of notifications, which refuses to go away. Now, I'll say a few things which may be a little sort of provocative, and since it is Astha's session, basically she may like to respond even after I have spoken. So mine may not be really the closing comments. When we talk about self-love and self-compassion, we are thinking of whether we are giving how much of uh, time and energy or whatever we can give, how much of it we are giving to ourselves. Now, here, one basic question arises is there anybody in the world who has all the time and energy available only for herself or himself? Which means that we live in an interdependent world and we do have to share. The important thing is whom we share that time and energy with. And basically, it boils down to the consciousness. And since this is a platform where by and large we have people attending the session and those who will watch the videos later on are those who are looking at life from the angle of something beyond the body and the mind. They're looking at something higher than the body and the ordinary mind, which is basically looking at physical comforts, some emotional satisfaction from personal relationships and the work that they do, and maybe at the most some intellectual satisfaction from the work that they do. I mean, this is the level at which most people are satisfied. But they don't look at something which may be even beyond that, and which, if addressed, can give a greater sense of fulfillment, uh, irrespective of external circumstances. Even if some of these basic needs of the body and mind are not satisfied, even then they can have a profound sense of well-being and fulfillment. So that is the type of people who are attending this. And therefore, and that comes from a certain level of consciousness. Now, these are the odd ones out who have difficulty. Now, some of the people with whom they have to associate with are a given. For example, the biological family in which they're born with. Sometimes, in spite of having some choice in choosing the partner that they tend to have, and sometimes, in spite of all the best upbringing, the type of children they end up having, Now, all these things are givens, and the level of consciousness may not match when it comes to all these. And again, the workplace, you can't always find a place where you'll work to make a living where all the people you deal with will be at that level of consciousness, which means that you have to find that circle of matching consciousness somewhere, sometimes quite outside all these relationships which are given and which seem to be more natural. Now, the balancing trick comes is that these are relationships which are given, and therefore there's no getting away from them. And therefore, how to do it in the least abrasive manner, in a way that they may get what you are meaning, but at the same time, they are not too uh, disappointed, or they do not feel the friction to an extent that they feel angry with you. Now, that is where the uh, balancing comes in. But then the fact is that we have all these relationships, and some relationships we can choose, and some we cannot choose. But the fact is that to have some relationships is something which is not only unavoidable, but also to some extent desirable, because after all, I'm not as different from others as I may sometimes feel. And when I decide to do something just to conform, uh, conform with whom? Conform with the people I have chosen for company, and that may not be much of a burden. And when I decide to be a non-conformist, is it only to rebel, or do I really feel that I'm not conforming because of some solid grounds to be different from others and have that uh, courage to stand up? And uh, once selection has been properly made, then there's no fear of missing out, because you're all uh, willing to miss out what is generally considered missing out. And also, what that spiritual awareness gives you is one important thing, because of which people sometimes tend to continue with these relationships even if they don't want to, and that is the fear and insecurity that one day I might need their help. If I'm not nice to them, they will not be nice to me when I need their help. Now, that sort of sense of insecurity also tends to disappear, because ultimately you realize that uh, the support that will be always with you is from the divine, and the divine is within you. So it is your own inner resources that will come to you more handy than anything else when it comes to a difficult situation. And if you are self-sufficient in that respect, then you do not need to maintain those relationships because of that fear of those relationships. Now, the next thing that arises is that we have to love ourselves, we have to love others. Now, we can love everybody, but we don't have to like everybody. That also we have seen in this session. And then we can choose those whom we can both like and love because of matching levels of consciousness. But still, there's a difference between loving others and loving ourselves. And one of the differences is that when we love others, we love them because we accept them as they are. Even if the level of consciousness is matching, there will be enough differences between any two people for us to sometimes feel, why doesn't the person behave exactly like me, which actually is an expression of our own ego. The other person is an individual in her own right, and therefore will be different even if the level of consciousness is matching. And therefore, we have to love others, even amongst the groups that we have selected, for being as they are. When it comes to ourselves, self-love, again, we have to accept ourselves as we are, but then at the same time, we can aspire to change and be better than we are. We can't change others, but we can change ourselves. So there's a total difference between self-love and love for others. We love others for because we accept them as they are. That is our expression of true love for them, which is what we call unconditional love. Love for ourselves is not totally unconditional. We love ourselves as we are because we know that after all we are human, we have our failings and weaknesses, and therefore we acknowledge them. But then we don't go on a sense of or go on a guilt trip. That again is a part of yoga, that we don't go on a guilt trip. We acknowledge sincerely and then work on ourselves so that we get rid of our weaknesses and impurities and flaws bit by bit, step by step. It's a long journey, but at the same time, we are at it. That is part of the spiritual journey. So, which means that we love ourselves as we are, but at the same time, we don't permanently accept ourselves as we are. We aspire to improve, we aspire to move on from there. These are some of the things which I thought might actually, in fact, invite a response because they can be provocative. So that's why I'm not having the last word. The last word belongs to the speaker.
Um, I think I really appreciate these conversations and narratives as much as what you said, provocative. I think these are the pockets of reflection, precisely what I also intended in the very beginning of the session to bring in here. I think what you spoke about, it's a beautiful description of what we call as art of detachment, is how I'm also understanding what you brought in. What really stuck me was how you said that, there are some relationships which are given. There are certain responsibilities and accountability which is given. So how do I then detach from that space of expectation and continue to fulfill my responsibility and also undergo this inner journey through spiritual realm, is what you also brought in. I don't think there's anything that I want to contest. I think it's a beautiful way to also heal. Of course, not that I'm not a religious person, but I definitely have my inclination and understanding of some narratives of spirituality, and I personally resonate with that idea of being able to observe myself as a doer and giver in the capacities that I am supposed to be in my different relationships with others and self. So there's not much that I want to add. I think you've beautifully justified the topic, the power of self-compassion, love and kindness towards oneself. I think you've beautifully summarized. So I'm very grateful that this is how this conversation has shaped up, where I am going to take back an element of understanding self-love through the realm of the spiritual aspect of it also. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot again, Astha, for sharing your valuable time with all of us. I thank the participants as well for being with us today. We can close today's session with a moment of peaceful silence. Namaste.